It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Miss Juliet Prowse.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the light. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show tonight.
Hey, have I got an opening joke for you tonight? You're gonna love this. This sugar,
To introduce our guest stars, that's what I'm here to do. So it really makes me happy to introduce to you Miss Juliet Prowse. But now let's get things started on the most
Sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational. This is what we call the Muppet Show.
Pioneer puppeteer and filmmaker Jim Henson. It was broadcast through public television network ITV in the UK and through syndication in the US. It features the friendly felt faces of the Muppets, with Kermit the Frog at the helm, with his co-stars Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Gonzo, Ralph the Dog, and so many more. They are joined by a celebrity guest each week to create a fantastic medley of comedy, music, and mischief. To your average viewer, The Muppet Show might seem a little quirky, but overall your average children's program. However, this cannot be further from the truth. The Muppet Show was a completely revolutionary and experimental moment in television history, turning the variety show genre on its head to create a distinctive program that is enjoyable for children and adults alike. For the Muppets, nonsense was the name of the game. Michelle Abate describes this in her paper, Taking Silliness Seriously, by explaining, from the often bizarre musical numbers planned for celebrity guest stars and the silly backstage antics of Kermit and company to Gonzo's odd animal tricks, the Muppets routinely embraced absurdity, irrationality, and foolishness. Indeed, they became famous for their celebration of it. There are a multitude of factors that led to the revolutionary and eclectic status of The Muppet Show. This can first be discussed through the program's use of avant-garde and somewhat camp visual styles and character creations. Author Jerry White explains this in his paper, Forever Young on the Big and Small Screens. He discusses how The Muppet Show is inseparable from Henson's roots in experimental and radical filmmaking. This can be seen through its nonlinear storytelling, its emphasis on mixed media visuals, and the uniquely playful spirit that crosses gleefully into anarchy. Scholar Elliot Serkin continues this discussion in a paper entitled A Sow is Born, in which he highlights the campiness of The Muppet Show, specifically through the character of Miss Piggy. He explains that Miss Piggy's over-the-top costuming with fortress-like necklines and costume jewelry are deliberate exaggerations. This use of camp highlights the unique possibilities of parody and absurdist comedy as an expansive and subversive genre. The Muppet Show also muddies the waters of viewership, especially by age. Audiences range wide in age, with not only children enjoying the program, but adults too. Adult viewers, especially based in Great Britain, found a great amusement in Henson's horde of peculiar puppet characters. As scholar Liam Malloy explains, through the show's somewhat crass, contentious, and particularly British-style comedy, the show invites an intergenerational audience. Through the show's play with structure, it is able to have a vast audience reach, specifically seen through the use of the celebrity guest. The show featured the biggest names of pop culture of the late 70s to early 80s, grabbing the attention of many adult viewers. Serkin explains the role of the guest star by stating, quote, "As a rule, it is the personality of the star that determines the tone of the evening. An Elton John will inspire an aura of frenzy and glitter. A Judy Collins will make things feel as laid back and low pressure as a lazy morning in Woodstock. Obliging hosts, the Muppets blend effortlessly into whatever ambiance their guest transmits." While the children stayed for the vibrant use of puppetry, the parents stayed to see the biggest stars from the stage and screen interact with Henson's offbeat puppet colony. Thus, the show's eclecticism and comedic and televisual styles made it what it is. A true melting pot of animals, monsters, and humans, morphing into this bizarre space that entertained all.
For this project, we also took to analyzing interviews with the Muppet creator the Muppet Show creator, Jim Henson. Although notably, in these interviews, Henson is rarely the sole interviewee. Often, he is accompanied by a Muppet, usually from the outset of the interview, but sometimes revealed partway through. The interviewer will then turn their attention and questions to the Muppet, treating it as just as much, if not more, of a celebrity as Henson himself. Take a look at these two clips from the Arsenio Hall Show and Can We Talk with Joan Rivers, in which the hosts are ostensibly interviewing Jim Henson, but the focus has quickly shifted to one of his Muppets.
You're wearing a sling. What's a sling for?
Oh, well, you see, you got to understand the facts of life here. See, I'm a puppet. Mm-hmm. I'm a dog. I'm also a puppet, you see?
Yeah.
Okay, well, now look. See, I got two hands. I got one puppeteer. Okay? He's operating the head. Mm-hmm. He's operating the hand.
Yeah.
See?
Oh, okay, okay.
We have a show called the Muppet Babies.
And whose are they?
Well, that's complicated. No, there's sort of a baby Kermit and a baby Piggy and baby Gonzo and stuff like that. It's all of us as though we were babies, but it's animated, you see.
Now, what were you like as a child? Were you...
I was a tadpole.
2, 1.
Both of these clips perfectly demonstrate everything we've mentioned about the Muppets and their self-referential fantasy reality thus far. In the first clip featuring Ralph the dog, we see interviewer and interviewee leaning heavily into the absurdity of the interview. Note how even as Ralph laments his own lack of autonomy, the camera has him framed perfectly in center as he speaks, treating him as his own entity entirely separate from Henson. The same is true in the second clip, as we see Kermit the Frog discussing different branches of the Muppet franchise and his own upbringing. Note that when being interviewed, these Muppets give answers that walk the line between realism, so we see them as their own individuals existing in our world, and fantasy, so we're reminded of the inherent magic and silliness that the Muppets inhabit. This speaks to several incredibly important aspects of the Muppet franchise. Firstly, as mentioned before, there is the blatant self-referentialism. If, when we watch The Muppet Show, we believe in its world, and we believe that Kermit himself really is pulling his hair out trying to organize these acts and put on a good show for tonight's audience, it only makes sense that he would appear as himself on a late-night show to be interviewed about the show's success. The willingness of countless late-night hosts to suspend their disbelief and engage directly with the Muppets as themselves also shows how the Muppets appeal not just to children, but adults as well. Henson employs the Muppets' undeniable magnetism and his own improvisational prowess to time and time again bring interviewer and audience under his spell of charmingly eclectic self-referentialism.
The structure of the Muppet Show's opening sequence mirrors the quintessential American variety show. The cast sings a catchy theme song, characters introduce acts to anticipate, and the title flashes at the beginning and the end. The Muppet Show itself follows a similar formula to shows like The Ed Sullivan Show, or perhaps a familiar program, Saturday Night Live. The cast performs skits, musical numbers, interviews, and current event segments, which appeal to children and adult viewers alike. This next clip is a segment that perfectly displays Jim Henson's range, both as a creative director and writer, as well as a voice actor and puppeteer. The segment on The Ed Sullivan Show, titled A Change of Face, stars actor Rex Robbins and Jim Henson as his patient Muppet. Here, American audiences tuned into CBS and learned how Henson's style and rhythm worked as an entertainer. The clip is family-friendly, the content is engaging, and the humor is fairly accessible. By slowly introducing the Muppets throughout late-night and programs and celebrity guests, the energy and tone of The Muppet Show permeated pop culture and created a recognizable style made possible through Jim Henson's artistic vision.
Well, what seems to be the trouble, old-timer?
I don't know, Doc. I guess I just don't know.
Well, I think I know what your trouble is.
No, you don't know.
Yes, I think I do.
He don't know.
Yes, you've let yourself get into a rut.
He did know, too.
Yes. What I'm going to prescribe for you is a change.
A change? What kind of a change?
A complete and total change.
A total change?
You're going to have to change your outlook.
Change
You're
my
going to
outlook.
change your personality.
Change my personality.
Change your face.
Change my face?
Yes. The easiest way to change your personality is to change your face. For instance, that beard. Let's take that off.
Ooh, where are you?
And the mustache.
What?
And the hat. And the fringe on the top.
Gee, Dad, can I borrow the car tonight?
I think what we ought to try is some new hair and these glasses.
Well, listen, what's happening, baby?
You know, you like my groovy hair there, square?
No, I don't think that's what we're looking for. No, I think we ought to move your eyes up here.
That'll make my nose lonely.
Yeah, well, we'll just balance your face by moving that up there, too. Now, how's that?
I feel strangely different.
Yes, you look kind of like a scholar or a poet.
A poet.
The Muppet Show, I'll describe a popular scene featuring Miss Piggy, Janice, and Rolf nursing Kermit back to health as a perfect example of the silliness exhibited in the show. The scene is riddled with puns, wordplay, enjoyed by age of ranges. Quips about Kermit and Piggy's relationship are familiar and hold up. And the scene follows Kermit being dragged into the hospital while surgery is performed on him by the other three characters. The scene wraps up with a regularly scheduled heckling from Statler and Waldorf. This is a consistent segment called Veterinarian's Hospital, which features Rolf, a dog, as head doctor. Henson's absurd humor shines through so that both children and adult audiences find irony in all Muppet Show sketches, let alone famous ones such as this. The skit is visually and verbally silly, further proving that the Muppet Show's goal was to be fun for all ages and to celebrate the arts.
Approaching and analyzing these Muppet-centric scholarly sources, interviews, and sketches confirmed and accentuated everything the world already knows about the Muppet Show. Its eclecticism, its self-referentialism, and the unique gift of the Muppets and their creator to be able to appeal to a wide audience by walking the line of ironic wit and childlike suspension of disbelief. To quote Jim Henson, "As long as we've had theater, we've had one kind or another of puppetry, but with the Muppets, there's sort of an innocence to them, and I think that's something that appeals to the child in everybody." Thank you so much for watching.
I'm going to pop in here to say this is a group of Mount Holyoke students, and they're presenting segments on the history of television. And up next, we'll have a segment on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Thank you to you three for the educational segment on the Muppets.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there. Hello, and welcome to the Hellmouth. Our presentation today is going to be on the 1997 renowned television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its implications for fandom and feminist culture. Before Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it felt like young women had to fight to find representation in modern fantasy media as well as queer people. We will finish by discussing the long-lasting effects of Buffy into today.
In 1966, Star Trek made its television debut and very quickly garnered an extreme fan base, the first fandom. In her 2008 article, Women, Star Trek, and the Early Development of Fanish Vidding, Francesca Coppa writes about the quick and dedicated fan works within the fandom, even in the late 60s and early 70s. Fan fiction, fan art, shipping wars, headcanons, and even fan edits, known then as vids, all originated from Star Trek and are present in all fandoms today. And Buffy is no exception. With the creation of fanfiction.net in 1998, Buffy has garnered thousands, and I cannot stress this enough, thousands of fanfics by eager fans excited by the world building and compelling characters. Fics can range from mundane one-shots dealing with the characters interacting with a new monster of the week, or longer, chaptered series involving overarching plots that fanfiction authors would come up with themselves. Crossover and alternate universes were not off the table either, such as many fans writing fanfics about the Scooby Gang interacting with characters from the hit TV show Bones, which starred Buffy actor David Boreanaz. Fans were making their own edits to the show, such as songs that they thought fit certain themes, such as one titled Buffy's Mad World, an edit to the popular Mad World cover by Gary Jules, made in 2003 right after the end of the show. Buffy, much like Star Trek, created their own tropes of the genre that would go on to find themselves in other TV shows of the 2000s, such as the musical episode. Once More with Feeling was the first of the musical episode we know and love today, and certainly one of the best. I'm looking at you, Supernatural. Buffy also helped normalize the LGBTQ plus representation in media with their official pairing of Willow and Tara, two witches who fall in love without a big fuss and fall out from the other characters. Even today, Buffy is revered simply because a series like this is tailor-made for fandom, whether intentionally or not, with compelling and, for all intents and purposes, attractive main cast of characters, as well as an interesting and very moldable world to build in. of course fans were going to gravitate towards it. Not only was the show utterly entertaining, but also dealt with the heavy and real emotions within a campy monster storyline, such as sexuality, death, and ultimately the trials and tribulations of being a teenage girl.
While the concept of feminism within mainstream media was well documented by the time Buffy came into existence, the 90s themselves were plagued by post-feminism, or the idea that feminism as a concept is now irrelevant. Buffy stands out as a breath of fresh air, not only to the fans of the time, but also to modern audiences, as a contradiction of this ideology. We see Buffy as a complex teenager in which romance and girly tendencies coexist with honed fighting skills and physical strength. She not only subverts the helpless girl trope by saving herself, but the show also allows for the nuance that comes with a fully developed character like Buffy in a supernatural world. She can fall in love with a vampire while also worrying about her friend's safety. She can experience grief while also fighting the forces of evil. By simply placing a character such as Buffy, the writers allowed their audience to understand and empathize with her struggles as if she lived in the real world. Because of the cultural moment that Buffy appeared in, her role within mainstream feminism in modern media has grown beyond just the show itself. Syndication, DVD sales, and streaming sites have allowed a new audience to become fans of the show. Buffy herself has become solidified in the role of the cult heroine because of the power behind her voice in both mainstream media and the development of fandom on the internet. While a lot of sci-fi media of the era was mainly dominated by a male audience, Buffy was one of the first television shows to cater not just towards women, but larger audiences as well. Women in general were finally able to see themselves in a genre that had long rejected them, and while men did watch and enjoy the show, Buffy became a safe space for female audiences.
So, as we have discussed, Buffy has done so much for women in terms of representation, in terms of what it means to be a woman. Like we said, like Buffy talking about how she just wants to be like other girls. There's one line in Once More with Feeling where she says, just fighting to be like other girls. It's very, very beautiful. And it makes it not a bad thing to be feminine. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into every single example of why Buffy is important, so what I'm going to focus on this last bit here is Willow and Tara's relationship and why that is very, very important for lesbian representation specifically. So Willow and Tara are actually gay, first of all. Like we discussed Star Trek earlier. One of the main things that Star Trek fans like to focus on back then was Spock and Kirk. Unfortunately, they didn't actually have a canonically gay relationship, but Willow and Tara do, so that's just super cool for the 90s, because they're main characters, and it has everything to do with them and nothing to do with Buffy or Xander or Giles or any of the other characters. It is fully reflected on Willow and Tara. So the first episode that we see this love arc begin to form is the season 4 episode Hush, in which everyone's voices are taken. They can't shout, they can't cry. And Willow and Tara are chased down by the bad guys and use their magic to fight them off, and when they acknowledge this connection that they have, their magic grows stronger, and I think it's just a very beautiful thing. Then the second, I think, super important episode to their love arc is also in season 4. It is the episode New Moon Rising, in which Willow's ex-boyfriend, her ex-werewolf boyfriend, comes back to their college, and he says, "I've got my werewolfness under control, Willow, take me back." And you think that she's going to, and then she doesn't, because she's in love with Tara. And when she tells Buffy that she sent Oz away, Buffy's like, "Why?" And Willow's like, "Because of Tara."
It's complicated. Because of Tara.
You mean Tara has a crush on Oz? No, you... Oh.
So Buffy's reaction obviously isn't the reaction that you'd want necessarily from your best friend when you tell them that you're a lesbian. However, I think it was good for its time, and Buffy and Xander and Giles and everyone accepts Willow for who she is and doesn't really question it. They're just a little startled, but I think they come around to it. They support Willow and Tara. Tara actually becomes a main part of the group, which I think is super cool. She's one of the Scooby Gang. Until season 6, we're going to talk about that later. The next episode that is really, really important, and I think this is the most important thing Buffy ever did for gay representation, is in the season 5 episode, The Body. I think objectively it's probably one of the best episodes in the season. It has nothing to do with vampires or monsters. It's simply dealing with the loss of Joyce, Buffy's mother. It's a very, very hard loss on the gang. It's a very, very hard loss on me too. There's no music in the episode, and it's the first episode in which we see a kiss of between Willow and Tara on screen.
Can't do this.
What is so special about that kiss is there is absolutely nothing inherently sexual about it. It is purely one of comfort and love, and I think that that's something that we didn't have before that kiss. Lesbians have often been fetishized, sexualized. Them kissing has been pornographied, if that's a word. So I think that it's really, really beautiful that Buffy gave us that representation. Then we're gonna do a complete 180, complete flip around. We're gonna talk about the season 6 musical episode, Once More with Feeling, which we mentioned previously, in which there is a lesbian sex scene. I think the first one ever on TV, aired on Warner Brothers. At the end of the song, Willow performs oral sex on Tara.
Beneath my willow tree, you make me complete.
The final point in Willow and Tara's love arc is probably one of the only episodes in the show that I will not rewatch. So the conclusive episode to Tara and Willow's love arc is in season 6, the episode Seeing Red. A whole bunch of stuff has culminated in this episode that I don't have time to explain, although I would love to. And basically, Tara gets shot.
Your shirt. Tara? Tara? Baby? Baby, come on. Get up. No. No.
Even though Buffy has done wonderful things for the girls and the gays, it still follows the famous kill your gays trope, killing off fan favorite character Tara. It didn't kill Tara, or Joss Whedon did not kill Tara off because he wanted to kill his gays. He actually had a fight with the actress, which leads me to my next point. Buffy is not perfect. It was run by Joss Whedon, who is famously sexist, so I find it very ironic that Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this super high point in feminist media, was run by a sexist. Even under Joss Whedon's reign, we still love Buffy. We still love what it has done for feminism and fandom, and I'm just very happy that we got to do this presentation on something that is so important to me. A good drawing of Giles. Why did I search up Spike and think it was gonna work?
I like how his face is so big compared to yours. Yeah. Are you drawing someone getting murdered? Oh no, this is a mustard shirt.
What?
Hello, you are watching segments by groups of Mount Holyoke students in a History of U.S. Television class. The next group of students will be talking about the show Friends. Thanks for tuning in.
In the near 3 decades since its pilot aired, Friends has solidified itself as one of the most popular and loved television series ever aired. The series first aired in the fall of 1994 and would run for a whopping 10 seasons, concluding on May 5th, 2004 to 52.5 million viewers. Despite it being nearly 20 years since the finale aired,
it still holds the position of the 6th most watched television series finale in television history. Friends remains just as popular to this day, largely helped by continual reruns on network television, as well as its place on popular streaming services such as Netflix and HBO Max. Now, Max. The series' place on streaming platforms has introduced it to a new audience, born during or after the series' conclusion. Friends is unavoidable in the media as a whole, as merchandise is found in every retail store imaginable, references and callbacks in other television series, and scenes and clips posted across all social media platforms. But what made it so popular? Well, for one, it was a charming, lighthearted series that it acts as a form of escapism for viewers. Viewers would watch Rachel, Chandler, Monica, Ross, Joey, and Phoebe endure life's trials of romance, work, and familial drama without the more boring problems of financial or class struggle. These characters all lived in large, beautiful apartments, and despite their jobs not being the most financially stable, things like high rent prices were never mentioned. Viewers could immerse themselves in the lives of the group of 6, knowing that they can always expect a solid and loving relationship between them. People watching from home could turn on their TV to any random episode and know exactly what to expect. Jokes would be cracked, antics would ensue, and the core 6 would be there for each other. No pun intended. The show was set in New York, and this was a large part of the overarching story. However, it felt very much like a New York of fantasy. New York in the world of Friends is separate from the orality of the viewers, again adding to this idea of escapism. However, it being as popular as today as when it was airing, Friends is placed under a scrutinizing eye. It's acceptable to new critique. In many ways, Friends' humor is not aged the best, as homophobic jokes litter the series, particularly in the earlier seasons, and saying that Friends was ahead of its time too, as it aired one of the first on-screen gay marriages in the series' 2nd season, which aired in 1995. In this broadcast, we argue that Friends does not deserve pure praise or condemnation, but instead must be situated within the media landscape of its time, and evaluated fairly within the political culture of the late 90s and early 2000s.
Friends is especially notable for a groundbreaking queer storyline that aired in its 2nd season. A key plot in the early seasons revolves around Ross's ex-wife, Carol, who divorced him when she realized that she was a lesbian. When the show begins, she is living with her long-term partner, Susan, and is pregnant with Ross's child. In the 1st season, as the 3 of them navigate co-parenting and relationships, the show plays with jokes that show the friends, especially Ross, making fun of queerness and jokes where their attitudes are shown to be regressive and old-fashioned. While the show no longer ignores or condemns queerness, as shows from the recent past did, Ross's emotions are often centered in the story. Towards the end of the 2nd season, the show aired an episode that focused on Carol and Susan getting married, though gay marriage was only officially legalized in New York in 2011. It was the first lesbian wedding ever shown on television, and as a result, it did have to conform to some of the conservative expectations of the time. For example, the characters were not allowed to kiss on screen. NBC expected pushback, but it was overwhelmingly positively received. The episode attracted over 30 million viewers and won a GLAAD award. Some network affiliates did ban the episode, and multiple Friends episodes are banned in several countries for its portrayal of queer relationships. But for the most part, critics agree that the wedding episode was groundbreaking for lesbian representation. In recent years, critics have pointed out that the show has many jokes that put down Carol and Susan's relationship. At one point, in an early episode, Ross refers to Carol and Susan as buddies, and when they correct him, he says, "You know how close women can get." This and similar jokes appear to present queer relationships as somehow less real than the show's many straight pairings. However, both actresses and showrunners have argued against this characterization. In one interview, the actress who plays Carol said, "We were never poking fun at being gay. We were poking fun at a person who didn't get it, who was uncomfortable with the concept of us being together. And that was the great beauty. This was all about love." Indeed, Carol and Susan are the show's longest-running relationship, and the relationship is even used to question regressive gender norms, such as in the episode where Carol and Ross's young son starts playing with a Barbie doll. Ross is uncomfortable with a boy playing with a girl's toy, while Carol and Susan criticize his old-fashioned beliefs. By the end of the episode, Ross is clearly portrayed as being the one in the wrong. Ultimately, the 1990s television landscape was reckoning with and representing queer people in ways it never had before. By the 90s, networks had realized that including queer representation appealed to a predominantly urban, progressive, often young audience. As we entered an era where networks attempted to appeal to smaller and smaller target demographics, this audience became a very desirable market. Comedy shows pivoted from sitcoms about families that were set in the home to shows like Friends, which explored work, romance, and what has come to be known as found family. The switch in demographics meant networks could also include content that would have been objectionable to older, more conservative generations of television viewers. Because Friends exists during a time of such drastic change, we must evaluate both its strengths and weaknesses. It earns points for its groundbreaking lesbian relationship, but is not exempt from jokes that put down queerness, especially in regards to the show's male characters.
Friends has been criticized for its handling of queer themes, particularly in the portrayal of Chandler Bing's character. During its original run in the 1990s and the early 2000s, the show was a massive hit and this issue weren't widely criticized. However, with changing societal attitude towards LGBTQ issues, the jokes in the storylines that were once considered humorous have now come under scrutiny. Chandler's character in particular was often the subject of jokes related to queerness, his discomfort of being perceived as gay, and the frequent joke about the sexuality are now viewed as problematic. For example, in the episode The One Where Nana Dies Twice from 1994, a co-worker tried to set Chandler up with a male colleague, leading to a confusion and a humor exchange where the friends discuss why people might assume Chandler is gay. This included a joke about Chandler having this homosexual hair and a kind of vibe. These types of jokes were indicative of the show's handling of queer themes, often using them for a comedic effect without deeper exploration or sensitivity. Over the year, as the show has been rewatched by newer generations on platforms like Netflix, there has been increased criticism on handling the LGBTQ themes and lack of diversity. The shows that were once considered comedic are now often viewed as problematic and sensitive. The Independent highlighted how new viewers find the show's portrayal of LGBTQ characters and a joke about Chandler's sexuality to be transphobic, homophobic, and sexist. This shift in perception reflects the broader change in societal attitude towards LGBTQ representations in media.
From praise to criticism, Friends allows audiences to observe the show from different perspectives. It can be argued that the show was ahead of its time in the 90s when it aired Susan and Carol's marriage, or it can be criticized when observing how Chandler's character was constantly made the center of gay jokes. Regardless, there's a lot to take from Friends and the way it represents queerness within its characters. The show itself took an approach that many did during the 80s and 90s. It committed to staying lighthearted and was able to draw fans in by maintaining engaging, humorous, but relatable topics. Other well-received shows took this approach as well, like The Cosby Show, where there's little to no mention of serious topics, only the trials and tribulations of everyday family life. When audiences look back at Friends and view it for enjoyment, older fans see it as a product of its time, while newer watchers are able to see many problematic undertones embedded in the show's humor. Still, more than 20 years after it aired, Friends remains to be one of the most popular shows in American television history. Its availability on streaming services makes it even more popular for the newer generations. Despite the nuance in regard to its depiction of queerness, Friends opened up a large opportunity for other shows to debut queer characters throughout the decade and beyond. It can be argued that queerness in television gained popularity from harmful depictions, which is in a lot of ways the truth. While Friends did show queerness, they never educated or explained it, leaving audiences to interpret the extent or seriousness of the relationship for themselves, even when a lesbian couple was literally shown getting married. The show's portrayal of queerness is condemned by many in recent times, but is in no way a reason to completely disregard the amount of joy and laughter that it brought its viewers throughout the years. Friends is a great show to look back on when exploring the manner in which queerness was approached in television in the 90s and how it has evolved ever since.
Hello, you are listening to a live broadcast of a group of Mount Holyoke students from a U.S. History of Television class who are presenting segments on series that were historically significant. Up next, you will be hearing a segment on Full House. Thank you for tuning in.
ABC had given us some iconic throwbacks from the Flintstones to the Brady Bunch and several others, giving us the standard ideologies of what a family should look like. The same old nuclear families, a husband and a wife with a kid, with a child that is occasionally changed to a large quantity of children. But something changed back then, and a new show came along and that shook up that dynamic. This show is Full House, and in just a second, we'll have some researchers come and explain to us how. But first, shall we see a small clip from the pilot episode?
DJ, honey, I can't let you have a garage sale.
What if I give you 10% of the profits?
DJ, come here. Can't you just try sharing a room with your sister? Your mom was always so good at this stuff. I'd come home from work and everything was always perfect. DJ, how would Mom have handled this?
She would have caught me before I moved into the garage. Mom knew everything I did before I did it.
What is it, honey?
It's just not fair. First I lose my mom, then Grandma leaves. Now I even lose my own room. Everything keeps disappearing.
I know exactly how you feel. And I know how much you girls miss your mother. Because I miss her too. Very much. But you still got me.
You got me too.
You got Michelle. And you have your Uncle Jesse and Joey. DJ, we're still a family. And now is when we really need to stick together. DJ, you and I, we go back a long time. 10 years. The 10 happiest years of my life. So look, it's up to you. Either you move back inside, or all 5 of us are moving into the garage. But nothing is gonna break up this team.
I'll move back in.
I love you, Angel. You too, little ballerina. Oh.
So with this small clip, we can see that something's different. We see that a widowed father by the name of Danny is struggling how to navigate, how to parent his 3 daughters alone. After his mother has left to go back home, after 3 months, a few shots before, here comes support from his brother-in-law, Jesse, and his best friend, Joey. This sets the premise of the whole show. So welcome to Reimagining and Redefining, where we explore the family dynamics and gender roles of an old show in the modern era.
After many years of the reproduction of gender stereotypes and many nuclear families on TV, a series with a different family dynamic opens the possibility for other ways of living. When Michelle, Danny's youngest daughter, struggles in season 5 because she doesn't have a mom, Danny says to her,
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Daddy.
I think we have to talk.
I think we better.
I'm sorry you went to so much trouble today.
I wish I had a mommy.
Well, I know you don't remember, but you had a wonderful mommy. And she loved you very, very much.
It's not fair. All the other kids have mommies.
Well, I know it might seem like everybody else has a mommy. But honey, the truth is, some people just have a mommy. Or they just have a daddy, or a grandma or grandpa, or an aunt and uncle. There's all different kinds of families.
Really?
Yeah. What makes a family is when you have people who take care of one another and love each other. You have a very special family. You have a daddy and an Uncle Jesse and an Aunt Becky and a Joey.
I bet nobody in school has a jelly.
That's a pretty safe bet. So you see, in a way, you and your sisters, you're pretty lucky. Because you have 4 people who care about you and love you very, very much.
I love you very, very much.
I love you too. Come on, let's go have lunch with your teacher, okay?
Will I ever get a new mommy?
Well, I hope so.
Have you met the school nurse? She's very hot.
Really?
Full House is deviating from the traditional family structures we usually see on TV. 3 quirky men take on tender, caring parental roles to raise 3 young daughters. It isn't until later seasons that we even see a maternal figure. Danny, Jesse, and Joey aren't like the typical emotionally distant fathers we usually see on family-centered television. The girls' loving relationships with their father and uncles is central to the show and are characterized continuously by lessons in growth and change.
But how was femininity portrayed in the 80s? How did Full House play into or move away from this standard?
Television in the 80s and 90s was partly defined by its themes of post-feminism, which is predicated on the assumption that feminism has already reached much of its goals. Part of this ideology is the emphasis on women's beauty and agency in their own lives. In an article, Andrea Press discusses how post-feminist themes in TV can present themselves as liberal leaning while simultaneously undercutting other aspects of liberalism and feminism. She mentions Sex and the City and its emphasis on the romantic pursuit for the right man. No matter how powerful these women are in their careers, their storylines are still dominated by their sexuality. The women of Full House, however, are given the agency to control their own desires and actions, but this premise does not diminish their personhood beyond standards of choice and beauty. Aunt Becky, for example, is an accomplished news reporter, yet viewers are still able to explore other facets of her life. The writers even go as far as to make her the breadwinner of her family. She has a strong connection to each of the show's character and a distinct, well-rounded personality of her own. She sets a strong example for what it looks like to be a successful female character.
So why was Full House produced, and how did the public perceive it in its debut?
Well, Full House, an ABC production, was the network's attempt to surpass NBC that received top ratings in 1984, according to the Nielsen ratings. Shows like The Cosby Show and Miami Vice really pushed NBC's popularity. To coordinate NBC, ABC launched family-oriented sitcoms, including Full House in 1987. And the more popular show Roseanne just a year later after that, returning to family values, but straying from the nuclear family. Although the prognosis for Full House was decent, the first reviews after the pilot aired on September 22nd to 1987 were abysmal. The show was kept in ABC's so-called death slot, which was Friday night starting at 8 p.m., and Full House barely made the top 75 at the beginning. And ABC still had the lowest Nielsen ratings and shares in primetime television. Well, however, the show quickly gained popularity. Already in the week of October 5th to 11th, Full House ratings increased, putting the show on number 49 with 11.9 ratings. The following summer, ABC moved the show to Tuesday nights, the network's strongest day.
How does Full House present the family roles?
The show challenges some of the traditional roles, while others are maintained. For example, in the first season when DJ, Danny's oldest daughter, is 10 years old, she takes over the maternal role and feels responsible for the turkey on Thanksgiving. In another part of the show, Michelle's friend talks about what mothers are stereotypically expected to do. Later, Michelle wants to find a new mom and asks her aunt for help, who describes Danny, her father. This description could stereotypically be about a woman. When Jesse and Becky become parents, Jesse stays at home. At work, Becky describes and appreciates the silent work Jesse's doing as a stay-at-home dad. In this episode, Jesse struggles with this non-traditional role. In Full House, they jump back and forth between the stereotypes and breaking with them. It shows the ongoing controversial debate in the 20th century about what defines a family and the less static gender roles.
Additionally, the second season aired simultaneously with the launch of ABC's TGIF, initially standing for Thank God It's Friday, but understood as Thank Goodness It's Funny, was the Friday night programming block. In 1989, the show was moved back to the Friday time slot and quickly became the anchor of TGIF. The family-friendly Friday night lineup, This was a strong move, and Full House peaked in the top 10 of the Nielsen ratings in 1990 and 1991.
So why did the show end despite its outstanding success in redefining family and gender roles?
Well, according to the Los Angeles Times, the old 8 p.m. family hour has slowly given way to programming for young and hip adults, whom advertisers pay big bucks to reach. Meanwhile, Full House had become one of the industry's most expensive sitcoms to produce, after so many years on the air, due to escalating producer fees and cast salaries. The reason for Full House being a top-rated primetime show was its audience, mainly children ages 2 to 11. The fact that ABC preferred traditional programming became an economic issue, finalizing the decision to cancel the show. The last episode of Full House put ABC in first place in primetime ratings during that week. Full House was in the top 10, actually number 7, with a 14.7 rating. Wanting to attract an audience ages 18 to 49, so ABC have substituted Full House with the show Roseanne, since it was more appealing to adults.
Thank you to our guest researchers for the wonderful insight. This show really challenged the nuclear family picture while maintaining a relatively traditional programming such as family-friendly sitcoms. From men taking on the maternal role to well-rounded female characters. Despite ABC's low ratings at the beginning of the 80s, the network really excelled with Full House. Thank you for watching today's episode on Full House Reimagined, exploring evolving family dynamics and redefined gender roles in the modern era. Now, on to our next segment. But how was femininity portrayed in the 80s? How did Full House play? How was femininity? Stop!
Oh my god. Sorry.
How was femininity portrayed in the 80s?
Three, two, one.
You are watching segments by groups of Mount Holyoke students in a History of U.S. Television class. The next group of students will be talking about the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Thanks for tuning in.
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air follows the story of a young man named Will.
Yeah.
Okay. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air follows the story.
Wait, we should wait for the clip.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down, and I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel-Air.
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air follows the story of a young man named Will, a street-smart teenager from West Philadelphia who gets into trouble and is sent to live with his wealthy relatives, the Banks family, in their luxurious Bel-Air mansion. The show revolves around Will's adjustment to his new upscale lifestyle, clashes with his cousin Carlton, his relationships with his family members, and his humorous interactions with the contrasting cultures of West Philadelphia and Bel-Air. Hi, this is Genevieve.
And this is Waka. Today we will cover The Fresh Prince, a sitcom starring young Will Smith from 1991 to 1996, and how it successfully charmed a mainstream American audience by the power of its young, relatable, and trendy protagonist and the appeal to the rising popularity of hip-hop and rap culture. But most importantly, it also managed to display a diverse representation of Black narratives by closely depicting the cultural contrast between Will and his privileged family. According to a New York Times article from the year it aired, quote-unquote, the primary focus of the series is not the tension between blacks and whites, but the cultural difference and misunderstanding that separates Fresh Prince and the black bourgeoisies represented by his relatives.
Further, the show explores themes of family, identity, and social differences while showcasing Will's comedic antics and growth as he navigates his new environment. However, the series addresses more serious topics such as race and class differences, especially from the perspective of Will. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was a success and achievement for its time, being one of the first major network television series which displayed the importance of having a diverse representation of Black narratives, particularly in regards to class, to a mainstream American audience. With this, here's a clip from our first episode.
What is the highest recognition a self-made Black professional can receive?
A raise!
No, darling, it's not a raise. I'm getting the Urban Spirit Award.
Oh, Philip, we're so proud of you. Is it a cash award?
Hillary, don't be so short-sighted. This award is an honor, which leads to prestige, which leads to cash.
Well, the community leaders are recognizing me for helping our brothers and sisters on the streets.
But the only time I've ever seen you on the streets is when you waiting for the valet to bring your car around.
In this season 1 episode, Not With My Pig You Don't, Uncle Philip tells everyone he's been given the Urban Spirit Award, him being recognized for, quote-unquote, helping our brothers and sisters on the street. Though Will is initially unimpressed with the grandparents visiting this to celebrate, they inadvertently reveal his far more humble upbringing in rural North Carolina. This is a shock to Will, as his uncle has clearly worked hard to maintain his image as a successful lawyer with elegance and class. The dichotomy with his upbringing and the image he represents of himself is even shown in the way he dresses versus his parents, his expensive suits going against their far more casual dress. His background comes to the forefront when a journalist comes to interview him for the LA Times. To the reporter, who is initially unimpressed with his squeaky clean image, Will reveals to his rural upbringing. Initially, Philip is mortified and embarrassed with this put in print. However, his mother, Hattie, confronts him asking, quote-unquote, "What have you got to be ashamed of?" With this, Phil contemplates eventually deciding to renew his pride in his past and embrace his upbringing at the end of the episode in his acceptance speech for that word.
Philip's reaction reflects the ideology of Black excellence, a societal construct often enforced as the only path to recognition within the Black community. However, this ideology is effectively challenged by the significance of acknowledging the value of authenticity over imposed standards. This is an excellent example of how The Fresh Prince is one of the few shows that stands out for depicting Black culture within their own community, preserving the authenticity and realism of their identity and lives. Unlike many shows that relegate Black families to a template of upper white class household, The Fresh Prince captures the roots of Black culture despite the class difference by acknowledging its historical context and adversities. In steering clear of whitewashed representations in television, The Fresh Prince restores a sense of pride within the Black community. Its commitment to authenticity not only resonates deeply with audiences, but also introduces a new depiction of Black Americans as people, not just Blacks.
In the Season 2 episode, Those Were the Days, Philip and Vivian welcome their old friend Marge, a friend from their activist days. With her presence in the luxurious mansion, it makes everyone in the house even more class-conscious. Having known Philip and Vivian when they were still working class, while the couple decided to pursue professional career, Marge is still an activist to this day. These tensions come to the forefront when Marge influences Will to stage a protest at school following the firing of a teacher. As a result, Will is suspended, and while Marge is proud of his activism, Philip and Vivian are unimpressed. Marge argues that she thinks the couple has lost their activist ways. Here's the clip.
The system doesn't work. You have to blow the door down. Looks like you forgot that.
You talk as if I wasn't there with you in Birmingham, facing dogs and fire hoses. This is me, Olafame. The same Olafame that was with you the night Harlem went up in flames. But now I have a family, and I choose not to fight in the streets. I have an office to fight from. And I have fought and won cases for fair housing, affirmative action, health care. And I am not ashamed to write a big fat check for something I believe in. And that doesn't make me any less committed than you. So don't you dare look down your damn nose at me, Adibola.
not forgotten about their roots, and continue to work towards Black activist ideals in their own way. The activism of neither Vivian and Philip nor Marge and Will are not downplayed, and they are represented in real and a confronting matter to the audience.
Although the topic is about activism, reminiscing the conflicts between Black and white communities, the plot focuses on the inner conflict within the Black community. This closer depiction of the class difference constructs a multidimensional image of African American lives, allowing the audience to know them as individuals, respecting the diverse personalities which built the Black community.
In the season 4 episode, Blood is Thicker Than Mud, Will and Carlton are both invited to apply for Phi Beta Gamma, a Black fraternity at their college. Despite both men being part of the fraternity, while Will is well liked by his fellow members, Carlton struggles to fit in. This is not only because of him being more quote-unquote geek, but also his upper-class upbringing. One of the leaders of the fraternity went as far as showing distaste for his clothes and his father's profession, calling him a quote-unquote sellout, believing Carlton wasn't, quote, Black enough to be a member of the fraternity as seen in this clip.
How dare you not take Will? He's full of potential. That's why we want him. It's you we don't want. Me? But I did everything. I cooked, I cleaned, I hand-washed the toilets. Everything your butler does for you. I'm not accepting no prep school, Bel Air bred sellout into my fraternity. Homie, you can stop all that. No, wait, Will. I got this one. You think I'm a sellout. Why? Because I live in a big house or I dress a certain way? Or maybe it's because I like Barry Manilow. He meant Barry White, y'all. Being Black isn't what I'm trying to be, it's what I am. I'm running the same race and jumping the same hurdles you are, so why are you tripping me up? You said we need to stick together, but you don't even know what that means. If you ask me, you're the real sellout.
With this episode, we see Carlton as a fish out of water as opposed to Will. Despite coming from privilege, Carlton still claims his identity as a Black man with pride, making a strong statement on the ridiculousness of this division between upper versus lower class Black Americans. Throughout the show, the dichotomy between Will and Carlton is a subject often used for comedic purposes. However, despite the humor found in the differences, this episode makes sure to establish both of their identities as Black narratives. Ultimately, the episode sends a clear message that it doesn't matter whether you are rich or poor. As a Black person in America, you are going to face the same prejudice regardless of how privileged you are. Despite the class difference between Carlton and Will, the show doesn't downplay the prejudice Carlton is also subjected to, not just as a Black man in America, but even within the Black community. At the time of the show was aired, The Fresh Prince was giving just as much praise across all audience as it is today. In a New York Times article from 1991, The Fresh Prince is described as, quote-unquote, one of the few shows that stand out for depicting Blacks within their own community. This shift in the depiction was significant to the representation of African American because, quote-unquote, African American culture is being exposed in a non-cliché way, and it shows Blacks in a Black context without law enforcement or criminal activity or being ridiculed, which succeeded in constructing a multidimensional image of Black history and culture on television. As the writer says, quote-unquote, look at me as people, not as Black. There were finally a representation for them, not as just Blacks, but as people in the shows like The Fresh Prince.
The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air held cultural significance not only for its time, but holds significance within the sphere of American pop culture to this day. It was one of the first mainstream shows to tackle showing diversity within the Black community. The show not only had witty humor, but through its humor was able to take on more mature themes such as racism, class disparity, and identity in a way that was comedic and meaningful. Further, it showed that sitcoms were capable of incorporating humor with meaningful social commentary. It set a precedent for future shows that explored similar themes and narratives. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was celebrated during its time and should be celebrated even today, as it left an undeniable mark on the cultural landscape of television.
Thank you for watching this series of segments on the history of U.S. television, featuring a group of Mount Holyoke students from a History of U.S. Television class taught by me, Hannah Goodwin. We hope you enjoyed learning about my students' research. Thanks.